dysfunction can be a big problem for the active walker, mostly because many are not aware that it is happening until it has caused a problem. So let's take a moment to talk about it. The surface of a normally functioning joint is quite slippery and has less surface resistance than wet ice. And here in Colorado, we know how slippery ice can be. Muscles can move these slippery joints almost effortlessly. So if a joint is really that slick and muscles really don't have much effort in moving them, then why do we have to wonder if they are functioning correctly or not? Well, it has to do with what's happening during the dysfunction that can cause slow and underlying decay of our structural and functional foundation. For example, most of us drive our cars on a regular basis, and most of us expect them to operate well all the time. We get in, it starts, put it into gear, and it just goes. But you can imagine that while driving in the snow one day, you slide into the curb and misalign the car's front tires. Now the car is compromised. Depending on just how hard you hit the curb will determine just how much the wheel will be misaligned and how much compromise there will be. But just how big of a deal is it? Well, let's say you drive your car from your home to the store, which is about half a mile away, and the rest of the time it just sits in the garage. Chances are you might not even notice any problems, and the consequences of the misalignment can be easily ignored. With such little wear and tear on the car, this can go on for a very long time. Now, imagine the same scenario, but this time you're driving a sporty little coupe that you drive at high speeds over long mountain roads on a daily basis. Now the situation is much different. The car is being pushed to its limits, and it's also being used more often and for longer periods of time. You can imagine that it won't be long until a small problem has become a big one. Soon you would be noticing a slew of symptoms associated with poorly aligned tires. These could include that the car is always pulling to one side, there's vibration in the front end, the car doesn't perform properly, and of course your arm's getting tired from constantly pulling the steering wheel to one side. This will cause extra wear and tear on the tires and the suspension components, causing them to prematurely wear. Now, these two scenarios are similar to what we're doing with our bodies. What is probably a small and ignorable problem to the person who's not active becomes a big problem for the active person. It's just really just a matter of time. What I want to do is take a few minutes to introduce you to a few concepts that will help you not only feel and perform better, but also will help your body benefit from your exercise efforts. As walkers, we need to be aware of two structural functional concepts that will directly and indirectly affect our ability to walk well. One is our posture and the ability of the spine to be flexible and springy, and two, the importance of properly functioning spine. So let's talk about our posture and what it means to the walker. The spine is composed of 24 moving vertebrae, supported by the sacrum and the pelvis. Now, each vertebra has multiple joints that perform many functions, one of which is to help with shock absorption. Now, just like a chain, each vertebra acts like a link, and collectively it performs a task. Each vertebra is a piece of the spine performing its own duties, where collectively the result is full ranges of motion that are fluid, strong, and efficient. Now, even one joint not moving well causes a kinking of the chain, and this results in a limited, clunky, and compromised spine that is not only not functioning well, but is at risk of failure. Each of the vertebrae are part of one of four curves of the spine, one at the neck, mid-back, low back, and the sacral level. The curves are involved in creating a springy action between the head and the pelvis to dissipate the compressive impact that occurs as we walk. Now, if these joints aren't working well, or the muscles that support the spine are stiff and not pliable, they will become stressed and eventually damaged. So we need to make sure that the spine is healthy, strong, and springy. Now, at the root of a healthy, strong, and springy spine are the joints of the spine that need to be functioning smoothly. As mentioned earlier, each joint is made up of three parts, and each has its own job to do. Working together, they create smooth and seamless motion. But when one or more of the parts of the joint are not operating properly, then the joint becomes compromised and it is considered dysfunctional. When this happens in the spine, it is termed a spinal subluxation. Just about everyone gets them, from babies to elderly. How and why seem to depend on many factors, such as levels of health, stress levels, fitness levels, and nutritional levels, to name a few. The dysfunctional or subluxated spine has negative effects on the walker because it interferes with normal structural and physiological functions. The brain's ability to control requires communication via the nervous system. This is considered coordination or technique. The brain sits in the skull. It forms the spinal cord, which passes through the skull and down the inside of the spine. It acts as a main trunk of wiring that connects the brain to the rest of the body. Now, at each vertebral level, there is a branching of the spinal cord called the spinal nerve, and it goes to the local glands, muscles, organs, and tissues, and this is the way the brain can communicate and control the body. When the spinal subluxations occur, they create an irritation and a swelling of the joint occurs, which causes pressure that squishes the nerves as they leave the spine. Now, just like when you fall asleep on your arm on the couch, you place pressure on the nerve in your arm and it's compromised. It goes to sleep, right? Similar effects occur with the spinal subluxation, placing pressure on the spinal nerve, except that you don't always notice its effects because not all nerves have a sensory component. For example, you don't usually feel your internal organs filling with food or the need to create new blood cells. Most bodily functions are just done without your awareness. The spinal subluxation then can compromise sensory as well as functional aspects to the function of the body. This diagram illustrates the nerves and their functions. It also shows common health problems associated with the different nerve levels when they are compromised. It might be interesting to note which nerves are associated with your situation. You might already be getting treated for conditions on this chart. Other problems that get created by neurological compromise include poor movement patterns. So even though the joints are properly aligned and the muscles are strong and effective, the brain tells the body to do actions that are vague, not efficient, or poorly timed. There's a lot of potential for poor or absent communication leading to problems. And we all know poor communication never goes well. Obviously, this isn't a good idea. Again, just like the car, if your body sits in the garage all the time, you might not notice, but if you're up and active, well, it's only a matter of time until you will notice issues. Most people are not even aware that they have a spinal subluxation, since they can have symptoms that range from almost nothing to severe crippling pain levels, none of which are good for the active lifestyle. Identifying and removing the underlying structural dysfunctions are essential for the active walker to create a strong and stable structural and functional foundation from which an active, effective, and injury-free workout can begin. The only way to determine if you have a spinal subluxation is to have a chiropractic exam.